One of my very favorite people is Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt, who is a radio host. He's a radio host who's on the radio at the same time I am. And I don't care, because he's my buddy. Hugh Hewitt, how are you, my friend?
Oh, it's a dark day, Mark Levin, and thank you for that very high praise of being your friend. I count that as one of my great honors.
Well, same here. Now, Hugh, you and I worked in the Reagan administration. John Roberts worked in the Reagan administration. I am absolutely floored by what he did here. Absolutely floored. How do you take this?
That is the way I felt this morning. I shared an office with him in the White House counsel's office, Mark, and I trust him and respect him and have great admiration for his intellect. I love the Citizens United concurrence. I thought he would go the right way today. I am looking for a silver lining. I wrote over at my blog, maybe it's his Marbury, maybe the executive thinks he wins, and in the end he loses if an energized electorate elects Romney and we get three great conservative Supreme Court justices and the repeal of Obamacare comes down and the Commerce Clause is cabined. But that's a lot of ifs. Today I feel disappointed and let down because I frankly, I've been teaching con law forever. I've never spent a day on the taxing power. It just has never been applied in this way.
Well, with all due respect, neither is he, because we have litigated this taxing stuff. And for him to just use it and then dismiss it as a labeling problem for the dissenters was way out of line. I mean, it's... But all that said, you even have a chapter on this, not the case, obviously, but the nightmare of Obamacare, right? In your great new book, The Brief Against Obama. By the way, the timing of this book couldn't be better. The Brief Against Obama, The Rise, Fall, and Epic Fail of Hope and Change Presidency. Well, what did you say about Obamacare?
I said that everything he ran on was duplicitous. Everything he has done is duplicitous. Every achievement is, in fact, a nightmare. And Obamacare, first chapter, is a cancer. I think you and I had hoped that that cancer would be cut out today. And instead, it's still there. It's still spreading. And it needs to be cut out, or the country will not recover from it. But also, the illegal immigration order of last week, that was another assault on the Constitution. The Brief Against Obama, you know it as well as anyone, it goes on page after page. The only thing he's done that has any merit to it is pulling the trigger on Osama bin Laden, and any president would have done that, Mark. Don't you agree?
I think any president, but maybe Clinton, but every other president would have done it. Now, Hugh Hewitt, you are a law professor. You're a nationally syndicated, big-time radio host. How do you have time to do all this stuff?
Well, I do it the same way you do it. I get up early and I stay up late, and I have a great staff and a wonderful spouse and people who help me along the way every day. But when a book, you know that books are hard work. You've written some incredibly successful, harder books to write. They're exhausting, and they don't make you any money, and they're not worth doing, except you have them in you and you put them out there for the reason that they might matter to some people. I wrote this book for independents, for people who want to persuade their brother-in-law, for people who are always looking for the facts about Obama and who always smear Republicans in the course of attempting to defend him. You know, they always say Reagan was a big spender. Reagan in his first term spent $787 billion in red ink. That's in the book. Obama will have spent $5 trillion in red ink in his first term. I wanted it all in one place, Mark, to make it easy for the voter.
It's absolutely terrific. This, I want to hit a few of them, too. This attack on Catholics. You're Catholic, aren't you?
I am. And this is an assault. I went to Thomas Aquinas College, which is a wonderful great books college out on the West Coast. Talked to all the faculty and students, none of whom will comply with this, Mark. They will not pay for the morning after pill. They will not pay for sterilization or contraception. I'm with Alliance Defense Fund lawyers today discussing this terrible decision, and the Catholic Church will not obey. Bishop Olmsted said that in Phoenix, Archbishop Chaput in Philadelphia, Cardinal Dolan. This is not going to stand, but it requires every Catholic not just to root their bishops on, but to get the facts as to why it's unconstitutional and vote and contribute and get in the game.
Now, if Obamacare had been ruled unconstitutional today, this assault on Catholics through Obamacare obviously wouldn't be going on right now, would it?
It would be over, and that is another dark cloud here. Here's the good news, and I want to make sure I stress this. I believe that the HHS mandate, based upon today's decision, is toast. I do not believe the Chief Justice foreclosed ruling against it. I think we have 4 justices who believe it will be improvident in any circumstance to have those HHS regs. So I think that will be, but it has to be litigated, And even then, I expect if this president is reelected, he'll just issue another executive order like he did on illegal immigrant kids because he wants to.
Do you believe, I mean, your book makes the case for this, certainly. Do you believe we have a president who is the most imperial president in your lifetime?
Yes. In fact, there is a chapter on how he is absolutely the least respectful of the other branches of any president, the most unilateral. He does things like, and I'm sure you've talked about this repeatedly, he refused to defend the Defense of Marriage Act. Well, whether you like it or not, you're the president. It hadn't been struck down even by a circuit court of appeal when he directed the Department of Justice not to defend it. That means he undid the work not just of the Congress, but of President Bill Clinton and the two of them acting together. It's astonishing what he did, and it didn't even get much note in the media because they approved of his end. And so we have a fellow for whom any means is justifiable if the end is that of which the left approves.
You're listening to Hugh Hewitt. That's my guess. Don't be shocked. You and I talk to each other all the time, and he actually has me on his show, too. Hugh Hewitt, who is a great lawyer, a law professor, worked in the Reagan administration, a dear friend of mine. Now, Hugh, given the president's unconstitutional behavior, given this decision on Obamacare, what do we as a people do about this?
Well, I am very cheered that more than 20,000 people who had not previously given to Mitt Romney gave to him today. And I hope it becomes 200,000 and 2 million. I think that people have to recognize this is a cancer and it has to be cut out and that Obamacare will spread. And I appreciate that you say, we do this with each other because you and I complement, we don't compete. I said that to the Right Online conference in Las Vegas last week, that I'm so proud that the blurb on the front of the brief against Obama is by Mark Levin. And that people always are a little bit astonished when we are on each other's show. But the bottom line is we've been in the same game since 1982, and we're losing right now. I think we're losing badly, Mark, don't you?
I think we're losing badly, Hugh, and I think if we lose this next election, I don't know how we're going to pull out. Do you?
No.
I really don't.
I don't either, because he'll get 3 more appointments on the court, 2 at least, but possibly 3. He'll have a unrestrained by any concern over reelection ambition to just issue executive order after executive order. And we've already seen today Eric Holder. We both work for General Meese. Can you imagine what that means to have the Attorney General of the United States, the chief law enforcement officer, held in contempt by the Congress? In other words, I just talked to Fred Upton. They believe he's lying to them. This is Watergate-level imperial misdeeds, although, again, Beltway Manhattan media not calling them on it.
And, well, let me ask you this. Your book, by the way, I'm trying to count how many, 25 chapters laying out the case here. And what do you think the most effective argument is against this president?
There's a 3-parter. Obamacare, number 1. Stimulus, number 2. The unemployment rate, number 3. There are constitutional issues which you and I care a lot about, but if we're talking to the independent in the street, and we're trying to buck up the person who doesn't really want to vote against the first black president, if any of those things come up, you start with Obamacare and what it's done. He already broke his promise that it wouldn't change your health care, that you could keep your doctor, that you wouldn't pay any more, and people are already paying lots more, and they've already lost their doctors, and it's going to get worse. So Obamacare, number 1. Number 2, the stimulus is gone. There's nothing left. Can't find any evidence that it was ever spent. It went into the pockets of union specialists and into the government coffers where it was spent on government employees. And the number 3 is the unemployment rate, which I think gets people between the eyes. He promised it would never go above 8% if we did what he asked. They did what he asked. It's never been below 8%. The kind of chronic unemployment that destabilizes and demoralizes hardworking, wonderful Americans, and they deserve better. Now, we can turn it around like Reagan did, but we cannot. If Carter had 2 terms, not even Reagan could have turned it around. We can't give him another term.
Hold on now. That is an excellent point. I hadn't thought about that. You're absolutely right. If Carter had 2 terms, even Reagan couldn't have turned it around. You're absolutely right.
So
now, the book...
fall apart.
The book is The Brief Against Obama by Hugh Hewitt. It's a great book. And by the way, folks, it's very easy to read. It's got a great notes section in the back so you can look up all the details and so forth. And, one of the issues that's the hardest for people to understand and the most destructive of our society, and I think you do a really great job, nice and briefly, of dealing with it, is this Dodd-Frank law. You want to talk about that briefly?
Sure. Nobody understands it because nobody read it. Although it was shorter than Obamacare, it was also incredibly complex. It was supposed to make financial accountability come to institutions on Wall Street. What it did was a magician's trick. Look at the right hand, and with the left hand we will cover up what happened at Fannie and Freddie, which was orchestrated by Mr. Frank and orchestrated by Mr. Dodd, both of whom ought not to be allowed to watch the kids, much less regulate America's financial institutions. And its practical effect, as banker after banker in small-town setting and credit union specialist and loan officer at car dealership will tell you, is to make it much, much harder to extend credit to people with great employment and great credit scores. It made banks extremely risk-averse. It added enormous costs in terms of regulation, all because Barney Frank and Chris Dodd wanted headlines and Barack Obama indulged them. So once again, it happens again and again under this watch. They say they wish to do A. In fact, they do not A. And our friends inside the Manhattan Beltway media elite don't call them on it. Dodd-Frank's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster.
What do you think he'll do? You've touched on this briefly, but everything you've written in this book, The Brief Against Obama, I'm talking to Hugh Hewitt, what do you think would be his number one, number two, number three priorities should he be reelected?
If he is reelected, the Bush tax error rates will not be extended. He does not care. He is driven by a hike in the tax rate so significant as to get back to pre-Kennedy era rates. So that's number one. The taxes are going to go up. Number two, the regulatory regime spewing like a volcano out of HHS will increase in its tempo and its complexity, so that our friends at places like the Alliance Defense Fund, at places like the Washington Legal Foundation or the Pacific Legal Foundation, they won't be able to keep up. And then number three, EPA got, I'm sure you saw this, they got the green light from the D.C. Circuit this week. They have a writ.
Unbelievable, by the way. Another case, just unbelievable.
No one understands how bad that, you and I do. That is a green light to take over the American economy under point source regulation. It's unlimited. It's truly unlimited. That's what he'll go for.
And Hugh Hewitt is a professor of law at Chapman University School of Law. Make sure you give Jim Doty my best, will you, over there? And,
I will do that. Our friend Jim, free market economists, we need more of them as presidents of colleges.
And my son goes to Chapman, and Hugh's out there. Whenever I ask him, he keeps an eye on him here and there. And this is a great book, folks, really. The Brief Against Obama. It's easily digestible. It's just in time for the election. He was a great writer, great radio host, great lawyer. We'll have it on all the Mark Levin social sites. You can go to Amazon.com directly. You can go to MarkLevinShow.com. We'll have it linked. The Brief Against Obama. It's a great book by a great author. Hugh Hewitt, my brother. Yeah, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a quick question for you. Is there any way to read the Roberts opinion as a long ball, as an attempt to energize the electorate and to push this back on the people to guard their liberties? Can you read
Hugh,
it that way?
I don't play games with these decisions. I read what he said, and what he said was outrageous. And I'm going to tell you something else. I happen to be one of about 12 lawyers who's familiar with the tax clauses of the Constitution. Do you know, in his opinion, he couldn't even tell us what kind of tax this is?
I know. I asked Erwin Chemerinsky earlier today. He couldn't either. It's impossible to decipher. There's got to be a motive, Mark.
Well, I will just say this to you. We had this thing defeated, but for him. Obviously, there'll be a political reaction to this. I mean, look at me and you. We're furious, and you know, we want to do more to defeat Obama. That's perfectly fine. Here's the problem, Hugh. We now have precedent, bad precedent. And so that's going to require a couple of new members on the court. It's going to require some kind of statute that raises these issues again, and reversing precedent. And as you well know, Professor, that's very difficult to do.
Yeah, it's very hard to do, and if we don't get the next president, it won't be done. You're absolutely right. It's a very difficult day for people who believe in originalism. Thanks, Mark, for the time, and thanks for the plug of the book, both in print and on the air.
God bless, brother. You take care. The Brief Against Obama by Hugh Hewitt. Great book. I want to strongly encourage you to get it.